Welcome everyone to Dragon Quest FM, where we talk about and obsess over Dragon Quest. I'm Austin,
I'm BJ.
and this week we're continuing our discussion over DQ3. We are going to be talking, for spoiler purposes, let's say still first half of the game. So anybody that's not made it through the first little bit, may want to avoid this episode, just like last week when we were dealing with various things. Today I wore a Final Fantasy Christmas sweater.
Oh, it is. I like
Yeah,
that. I like that a lot.
I've been trying to wear a different one. When we do next week's show, I'm gonna have a different
Yeah.
Christmas sweater. I only have like three Christmas sweaters, but I
I
got
don't
my
have any really.
Christmas slime
I like
behind
it.
me.
I
You
like
got your
it.
slime hat on?
I do. I found my slime hat. It was in, okay, so it wasn't where I thought it was. It was in the back pocket of the driver's seat in my car. It's been there for the last
Oh,
year in the
that's weird.
Rogue. Yeah, it's weird. I reached behind me to get a mask the other night because we were going in somewhere with a lot of people. And I was like, that feels weird. And I pulled it out and it was like, it was this. And I was like,
I
huh.
th I think it may have been in there longer because you saying that brought up a memory of last year when I was up in Tennessee. You picked me up and we drove and met our friends Barry and Dale at the Kitchen
Right.
218. And I was in that car with you and I grabbed for something in the back seat and I feel like I found that and we like made jokes about it and we were like, look, slime hat.
Yeah, you may have. You're right. I remember that. Where that might be
Yeah.
when I actually dumped it in the pocket. It may have just been in the back seat of the car where I've worn it somewhere or otherwise. But yeah, that's. I love the slime hat. It actually fits me okay. So that's the thing. It's actually way more comfortable than the elf hat or anything. So
And
I'm
and
continuing to wear this.
it's different from mine because mine has an actual little blue slime on it and says like something.
Something. Yeah, I can't remember.
Merry Slimemas or something. It's some kind of like, pun for
I was
Christmas, I
about to
feel
say
like.
goopy holidays, but that's something completely different. I think that feels weird.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
the
I can't remember.
yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, this one fits. It's thin, but I really like it. I've been wearing it to different events over the last week. It's this is where people look is like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, yep.
That's sad. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. They just kind of
Huh.
look at me like that's a weird thing on your hat and
Huh.
continue moving.
Yeah, I've had people at my house before um call it the blue poop emoji. They think I have a lot of blue poop emojis in my house, and
I could see that.
that really offends me on multiple
Yeah.
levels.
Yep. Yep. That makes me sad. I also understand it though. Like at least that one I get where that they see
Yeah.
that and there are so many variations of the poop. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I guess.
the one behind you is definitely not a poop emoji because you can't see the
No, he's
top
got
little
his
squiggle.
little, yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
got a
love that
Santa
one.
hat. You
I
got me
love the
this.
slimes with hats. I know I did. You got it turned out to be way bigger than I thought it was. I thought it was gonna be about half that size, and when
It's
it came in,
huge.
I was like, I love it.
Yeah, throughout the year, it stays. I have a pile it's basically just slimes. There's a Spirit of Lost Time, one of the little Yoshis
Mm-hmm.
from 11. And then there's a bunch of slimes and like some Pokemon plushes, and there's just a
Yep.
pile. But because he's so big, he stays at the bottom of the pile most of the time.
He's got
Or
to be the
she,
foundation.
they, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what my slime is.
I don't know. It's not orange, so it's not a she slime. So
That's
it
that's true. That's true. I didn't think about that. There are orange she
yeah.
slime. So yeah, I guess
So
that's
if it
true.
were orange, it would be a she. So, but yeah. So things.
Dragon Quest 3.
Dragon Quest 3. Now that we're
That's
talking about
that's
slimes and
where
everything,
that's
that's
where
where we're
you were
going.
going with it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to say thank you after last week. I think it was Platty who left the comment about using the thief to lower the encounter rate.
I don't think it
Was
was
it not Platty?
Platy.
Was it not Platty?
No.
Thank you
I
for the
think
listener who told me about the thief because I've swapped out the monster wrangler in my party for a thief so that I can use the Padfoot ability that
Padfoot.
lowers the encounter rate. I never even considered it that was something, and since I've not actually been that impressed by the monster wrangler, since I mean I'm early, I haven't like unlocked all the stuff. But since that, I'm just going to use the pad foot ability to maintain as much lower encounter rate as I can. So thank you for that.
It
Um,
is. I got kings.
I got
Um,
kings. You're awesome. Thank you
yes.
for that. Like, really, that was something that never even crossed my mind. And it makes up for part of the melee, not having to worry too much about managing and running out of mana and NP and stuff like that. So it'll be another good heavy hitter in the part. Not heavy hitter, but melee hitter where it's still going to be solid.
What happened just to you and anyone listening, watching this that needs this explained to them? I got kings. Their profile is a metal king slime. And I think in your brain, you've just so used to seeing that be Platy's profile pic
I think so.
on
Yeah.
social media that you just automatically assumed it was Platy.
I did. I did that. I absolutely 100% did because I was seeing it in my head just now, and it was because of the icon that it's like, yeah. So I apologize for that. But thank you. I got Kings. Like that's it's the most wonderful thing after, especially on the Switch because of it being really really hard, really hard to get it to get through the loading stuff without getting too frustrated. So.
Yeah, and I noticed, I think it was Brad commented on YouTube as well, saying that he had started playing just on PS5 now. That he had started on Switch, and then after you
Yeah.
said that too, that he's just been playing on PS5. I think it was him. Um, so anyway, also thanks for people who are like leaving us comments and interacting
Yes.
with us. That's always fun. Like nice hearing from people. Um, yeah, and so for like we were talking about before we hit record on this episode that we were looking back and we were like, oh wow, there's like actually some things we kind of skipped because we generally went from like Aliahan to like Romeria and
Mm-hmm.
Monster Arena talk, and then we were talking about the pyramid a lot last week. And there's actually like a whole lot of cities and different things that you go around to and visit that we just kind of breeze through really quickly because and the reason for that honestly is because it is kind of like the whole like Australia segment of DQ3 really is just kind of like the tutorial.
Tutorial.
And
Yeah.
so I think we kind of took it for granted that like, oh, that's kind of like the tutorial area, blah blah blah. But there's like still things to do
Mm-hmm.
in Aliahan and the surrounding areas. Like you know, one of the first things you have to do, of course, is get the Thieves key. And I you it's like it's very similar to other DQ games. People who maybe haven't checked this one out yet, where you know you get like the Thieves key, and then it's like the I think it's the Magic key, and then the Ultimate key, or what they're called in
Yep.
this one. And they let you into different things, find different treasures, let you into different parts of different buildings, all of that stuff. Along the way, you get to meet Robin Hood, who you've met.
Think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you did the first fight with Robin Hood, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Yeah. So, um, Robin Hood, who is he's kind of like somebody at work asked me about this recently because they're playing through DQ3 for
Okay.
the
Okay.
first time, and
Okay.
they were like, so this Robin Hood guy, like, you know, like he ran off and all of that stuff. And I knew he plays a lot of Final Fantasy games. And I was kind of like, he's kind of like Gilgamesh in FF5 before Gilgamesh in FF5 existed, where you like kind of have this kind of goofier character
Mm-hmm.
running around. And if you pay attention,
It's
he's
a
got
good
like
way
a
of
little,
putting it.
yeah, and he's got like a little like arc, you know, throughout the
Yep.
story where you have to fight him again, and then ultimately, spoiler here for late game, I guess. So skip ahead 30 seconds. You know, you find him in the left guard section there at the end too, and it's like he went on quite an adventure. Like you're not. I think that's the important takeaway with Robin Hood is that you know Erdrick's not the only one that went on an adventure in this game because Robin Hood had himself an adventure as well.
And I don't think that's the case with Robin Hood in other games. That I can't think of any where it's not just kind of a one-off, joke, and they where they reuse the boss. But I don't think there's
Yeah.
one where it's a running thing where he's actually a running thing.
Yeah, no, I think it's unique to three. And I think it's one of those things that because he's been memorable to DQ3, like they bring him back and
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's been in like the Monsters games and things
Yep.
like that. Where I guess if you're keeping track of like series first, I guess, then Robin Hood in DQ3. This would be kind of like that milestone here. Uh, first first interaction with Robin Hood, and also like second, third, fourth
Right.
interactions with Robin Hood. So you get to do all that kind of stuff. You find Thief's Key. You get to Romeria, and in this version, that's where you actually unlock like the monsters
Hmm.
and getting to pick up stray monsters and doing the monster arena. Did you immediately go into the monster arena and start trying to do
Yes.
fights? And did you make it all the way through the first
No.
three that they offer you? Okay.
Nope.
Because
Not at all.
because we didn't chat about that
No.
outside of the podcast or on the
Or
podcast,
in,
and I,
yeah.
I was curious.
Nope. I did not.
Did you make it through the first one? The second one? You remember?
Second one.
Okay.
Second one. But
I I did not. I just assumed when I was playing the game, I just assumed that they were going to wipe the floor with me for
right.
those first three, and I was like, I'm going to find some monsters, more monsters first, and stuff like that.
Right.
Because you start off like when you first unlock it, there, it's like you have the slime, and there's a bunny corn in
Hmm.
Romaria there that you like get
That
pretty
like
much
you have to
instantly.
wait. There's an NPC that says, "Hey, there's a monster that comes out at night. Well, I don't, you can see it sometime." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Well, I
really?
guess I should go to the night." And it's the bunny corn.
Oh, I
Uh,
missed that one. I just happened to be in Romaria for the first time at night, and I didn't
oh,
know that. Yeah, I totally missed that
yeah.
whole
There's a
NPC
lady over by
interaction.
the fountain who's just kind of wandering around. She's like, "Did you know there's a monster that comes around? I've only seen it at night or something along those lines." And I was like, "Well, I guess I could better go back to the inn and rest
Hmm.
until it's night." And sure enough, there's the bunny corn right there by the fountain.
Oh,
Whenever you do it. So I was like, well, if
yeah.
too bad all of them aren't that direct on finding the monsters.
Okay, yeah, maybe, but also I felt like that bunny corn kind of blended in good. Like I didn't. This is what happened. Okay, I was I went to Romeria, right? I went in there and it was just nighttime already. For
Right.
whatever reason, I felt like the first time I ever came to any of the cities in this game, just for whatever reason, I would always
Hmm.
get there at nighttime, which worked in my to my benefit because it meant like getting the trophy for the Puff Puff for the first time and like um
Uh,
and getting that scene that we talked about in a previous episode, where it's like the girl's dad
hmm.
is like, oh, yeah, that whole thing, like all of that I did, first go through. And then a lot of times I would need to rest at an inn so I could just sleep. And then it'd be
Right.
morning and I'd go out and do the daytime stuff that every city has. So it worked to my benefit ultimately. But yeah, so I got there to Romeria for the first time. It's dark and I knew that, I'd unlocked the monster arena, whatever. I walked to just the first area. I didn't even see the bunny corn. Like because
Uh
it blended in
huh.
so well with
It's
its
like behind a
surroundings.
bush or a bench. I can't remember. You just see part of it sticking out.
Yeah, it's like a little bush over there by like a fountain. And I was just the game, if you get close, like thankfully, this is something it does in your favor. If you get close, it will automatically trigger the cutscene where you'll recruit it. I did
Right.
it purely by accident. I just happened to be walking around the fountain at night and the bunny corn came out and I was like,
Oh.
wait, what? And I just was like, yay, I got a bunny corn. And wasn't sure, I'm still new to this at that point,
Right.
wasn't sure what happened. And then like you were saying before we recorded this, like I was exploring like as much as possible and going to other
Yeah.
areas and like backtracking a bit because I was like, ooh, are there monsters that,
Hmm.
I unlocked now behind me? So it's like I had a team, but I just assumed they were going to wipe the floor with me. So I actually didn't do the Romeria fights till a little later. Like I came
Oh yeah.
back. I think it was maybe after I had the magic key, I think.
Okay.
So not like super long after, but long enough after that, you know,
Yeah. And
I felt more comfortable doing it.
I have a problem with getting the keys and going back because once I get a key, I end up doing a lot of exploration in that area and going back to a couple of the milestones, trying to remember where I saw keys or doors of that color to get through. And I
Hmm.
did that a lot. I don't want to say I wasted time, but I spent a good amount of time in Aliahan and the surrounding area looking for places to use the thief's key
Hmm.
because I didn't know exactly where they were. I mean, there are places in the castle to use it and stuff like that. But that's one of the things that I do to waste. I hate saying waste time because it's a game and I was having fun.
Yeah.
But spending time instead of progressing the story, I will explore specifically for the keys, which now with the monster wrangler finding the monsters, it might not be, even it's at least something else I can find while I'm
Yeah.
doing that. But I do that every time I get a key, whether it's 11 or any of the other games. I'm like, oh, there are things that I could unlock elsewhere, and then I take a pause on the story and go back. So I did that once I got the thieves key before I moved forward too. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I haven't moved terribly far forward in it is because I've been pulling an Austin way more than usual in exploring little corners as I go.
I mean I still pulled an Austin in my DQ3 playthrough, but like we've talked about before though, I do speedy exploration. I don't know if
Mhm.
I just like barrel through stuff and I explore a lot, but I don't know. I explore efficiently. I'm an
And
efficient explorer.
I'm Tornico. I'm like dirty dirty dur. I'm gonna find some stuff and just kind of wander around where I'm not very efficient at exploring. That's why things like Xenoblade, I don't try to find everything in the areas because I end up getting distracted by stuff so easily that I don't like. I'll fight all of the monsters, or I will go down every single path as far as it goes, even if I know that it's going to be a dead end. I'm boring. So it would be
Well,
terrible to watch me do that.
two, like there's like this is honestly like this is really your first like playthrough of DQ3. Like
Of
you've played through
three,
sections
yeah.
of it, but this is like the first time you're playing through it. You plan on beating it, like
Yep.
all of that stuff. So, and like for me, it's not. So,
So,
I would know stuff like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about even bothering going over there till I'm level 10 and have
yeah,
the magic key. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
there's
do.
stuff like
Yeah.
that where it's like trial and error kind of stuff when it's your first playthrough because you don't know. You're like, can I
Yeah,
go over there yet? And then you die and you're like, no, I
nope,
cannot.
sure cannot. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas I'm like, oh, I need to go like there's different story beats in 3 that I, I not disappointed, but there was kind of like a feeling I had when I was playing it this time where it's like I almost felt like I was cheapening the experience a little bit because I would know like the way the game is
Oh.
set up because there's several portions of the story that like is really more open world. And I would just know automatically, like especially once it opened up more to like do the orbs and everything,
Hmm.
which we'll talk about in a later episode. But so like no spoilers there. But like when it got there and everything, like I would know like, oh, I don't need to go down to this town first and hear the secret from this NPC to figure out how to do
Right.
this because I just know how to do it. So I'm just going to go there and do it. And there's definitely moments like that, even early on, where I would just be like, okay, I'm bypassing this town first to go do this thing, and then
Yeah.
of course I would go back to it because I want mini medals
Hmm.
and there might be something at the shops that I wanted and stuff like that. But it was like I knew kind of when to bypass stuff.
Yeah.
And so it did kind of there was a few times when I was playing it that I felt a little bad about it because I was like, I'm cheapening this, but at the same time I was like, what you gonna do? It's human nature, like
Yeah, I mean, why would
to
you
know
go
that
to the
stuff.
town just to get the secret if it doesn't actually unlock the thing? Like, there's a big difference in having to talk to an NPC that unlocks the actual mechanical part of the game that you can't progress past. But if it's
Yeah.
just giving you a clue, yeah, why go down there if you can go straight through and then return later for whatever reason? That's I think
Yeah.
that's a
It,
veteran JRPG thing that once you've gone through, I mean, we all do that in adventure games too, like Zelda, things like that, where once we know how to go through, we don't go talk to the NPC that's going to breadcrumb us to the next area with the dungeon or the weapon. I mean, I think
yeah.
that's just replaying some of your favorite games.
And even like whenever so this is a very brief just like late game thing, but no spoilers, but like I played through the entire game, like beat the game, okay? And like was even in the post game, had beat like the first post game boss and all this stuff, right? And I realized that I had never been over to, I think it's called Lazami.
Okay.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Some of the pronunciations, because this game has voice acting, really threw me off. Because
Yeah.
like, like a Leohan is one of those that I was like, yeah, I guess that is how you say it, but like I'd never just said it aloud. I don't know. But anyway, so like there's this whole little area. It's in the like southeasternmost
Hmm.
portion. It's just like a little series of islands, and you never actually have to go there. And I realized that I'd never gone there, despite
Yeah, of
being so far, and I had to go there because I was missing some monsters from there when I was trying to clean
course.
up all the monsters for my
Yep.
recruiting. I was like, oh, I'm missing like two monsters. I think it was a mini medal anyway, and I
Yeah.
just realized that
Huh.
I was like, there's a whole section of this game, this map that I never even went to, despite having done all this stuff already. And so
Wow.
I had to uh I had to sail in my ship and go over there and
You
get
just
that
kind
stuff
of
after
putt
the
putt
fact.
around with your slow boat. Uh,
Yep, that is what I
uh,
did.
so you mentioned voice acting, and that's something I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you
Oh,
about.
okay.
That the voice acting in this grates on me,
Oh,
and
really?
it's not because of the quality of it. That's the thing. I think I've put my finger on it. Is that this and Octopath and the games of that looking like this that are the pseudo retro stuff? I don't like voice acting in 2D RPGs. It feels weird. Whenever I'm going through, you talked about it before, I think, and I agreed where I read faster than they talk, so I
Hmm.
just tend to stop it anyway. But
Hmm.
it whenever it starts talking, because not every interaction is voiced.
Right.
Whenever it starts talking, I have a hard time, like it jars me because I don't think it should be there. That I feel like it I know why they did it. I think it's
Hmm.
high quality, and I'm really glad that it's there, like in terms of enhancing the game for people who really like that. But because of a 2D RPG, it feels like something that's been superimposed onto it rather than something that was integrated naturally. And I think it's just because of the nature of it. I found myself doing that in Octopath too. Like, I don't want to listen to you do this. Like, this feels weird. It's like the voice doesn't match this little sprite that I've got, you know?
Yeah. I can see that. I went through it the same way I go through pretty much any game with voice acting, where it's like you said, I read faster than what they can say it, and so I tend to just skip through
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And it's I think the disconnect with it too, because I agree with you. It's like having the voice acting is cool, but in this kind of game, it doesn't really add anything. And it's because there's not really cinematics and cutscenes to watch. It's
Right.
not like it's not like there's nothing like in DQ11, where like
Yep.
Erdrick or the Luminary and Eric are like jumping off the cliff, and they're like getting
Mm-hmm.
chased by things, or they're riding on horseback and Hendrik is after them with his knights. There's not like big cutscenes like that, and so it doesn't feel like voice acting is really necessary. I
Mm-hmm.
think is the issue, but I mean even in games like Star Wars Outlaws that I played earlier this year, like
Yeah.
that you're walking around and it would irritate me because there's lots of times right there where you can't skip the dialogue. You just have to let sit there and let the NPC talk at you to
Oh.
to listen to what they're saying. And I would just really want to wish I could like click the X button and just get through it and
Yeah.
everything, because it's like it took me no time at all to read it, but because it's such a cinematic game, there would be the dramatic pauses
Mm-hmm.
and the different inflections and stuff like that. And I was just like, I want to play a game. Just tell me what I need to know. I wish I could just skip through this.
Yeah.
So like I didn't find DQ3's voice acting distracting at all or bad or anything like that, but
Yeah, definitely not bad.
it is one of those things where it's just kind of like felt unneeded for this kind of game.
Yeah.
And there may be people who really appreciate it and sat there and listened to it all the way through. I don't know.
And I really want to know from you guys if that was something that y'all liked. Let us know in the comments about that because in stuff like this, I feel like, and I don't want to be a negative Nancy, I don't want to be a detractor of this at all. I'm curious about our expectations and our experiences with other games that influence it as well. I'm curious about other fans, how you feel about stuff like this being added in, because I think it's great that there's voice acting there. It's just I hate that it didn't work for me whenever it happens. And so I'm curious if it's really enhancing the experience for any of y'all.
Yeah. And I think like this is kind of a sticking point with me a lot of times because my kids watch me play most of the games I play, unless there's
Right.
like some that I think are like maybe too bloody or inappropriate,
Yeah.
like I won't play those in front of them. But for the most part, like I'll play anything in front of them. But they like to listen to the cutscenes play out, and they get very
Mm.
they get very irked at me for skipping ahead.
Oh.
And it's been especially bad like in like DQ3 remake was one of those things where they would be like, "Can we listen?" And like Visions of Mana, when I played Visions of Mana earlier
Oh
this year when
yeah.
that came out, like I would be skipping through stuff because I would, be reading it faster. And Naomi would be like, "Can you please stop skipping it? I want to listen to the cutscene." And like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink way back in like January,
Yeah.
February, like was the same way where it's like they really like those kind of games. And I mean I do too, but they want to watch them play out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's for me, it's like if I read it, I'm like, next,
Yep.
let's go on.
The
And
only
so
times that I don't do that are when it's a very emotional, like cinematic scene
yeah,
where it's a big scene. It matters a lot. If it's something like I'm walking up to the king and suddenly there's voice acting or a small cutscene or something, I'm probably just going to skip through it.
yeah,
But read it, read it. Don't get me wrong. I'll always keep the text online on screen, even if it's just a subtitles thing, so that I can read it, but then skip through it. Jennifer's actually called me out on that before because it sounds stuttery while I do it. She's like, "Huh, and then
hmm
you what?" And she's like, "What do you get out of that?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm reading it first." And she's like, "Yeah, it's annoying to listen to though." And I'm like, I can see that, like being in the other room or not really fully paying attention to what's on screen. Like I can see how other people who are not directly engaged with doing it and control of it would be irritated by that. So I get
yeah,
Naomi, especially like wanting to experience all of that stuff for the first time.
yeah.
Uh, so I do. I get that.
And so moseying on along here while we still have a little time. Um, then you also get to stuff like the Dreamer's Tower, which we didn't really talk about, and all that stuff that lets you find the Thief's Key,
Hmm.
which is kind of like the first real like dungeon in the game, and that's where you have like the I guess that's like where the true test comes in. But I
Yeah.
think for me, like I I did not find it very um I didn't find it very challenging
Mm-mm.
at all, even with the higher encounter rate. And I know we talked about like the 2024, like Vision 2024
Yeah.
goggles, with the encounter rate and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where it's like I felt so overpowered and so powerful that, I just,
Yeah.
you know, it was like for so much of the game, I really did. And then I think all the balancing ends up working out fine. But did you struggle with any of those earlier portions at all?
No, not in terms of difficulty. The like I mentioned a couple of episodes back about how at the very, very, very beginning of the game, well, before I had a heal spell, the even on Fight Wisely or not Fight Wisely, the other one, Show No Mercy, they would use all of my medicinal herbs and wouldn't act like I hate that when an NPC uses all of my healing items when I
Mhm.
know I didn't need it, even if I put them. I don't know how I just knocked down from the other side of the room
I was about to
a
ask what that was.
like okay, so I'm at my desk, it's beside a wall and it's not actually touching the wall, but somehow one of my Spider Gwen Funko Pops just jumped off of the window and landed in the floor behind my monitor, behind my camera here. And I'm just like, I didn't move. I didn't adjust the desk. Like I had moved it away from the wall earlier. And I'm like, I don't know what happened. I think
Your house is haunted.
maybe I'm haunted. But yeah, the yep. But no, the account like that was the only like issue I had in terms of going back to the outside of Spider Gwen falling and jumping off and being unable to swing. The only issue I had in DQ3 early was them using my healing items. But what I did have a big problem with, and this is me, and I want to warn anybody else who has not started this game yet. I think it's after you find the Thieves Key. It is
Hmm
after you find the Thieves Key there, and you go through, there's this cavern that you open up after that that will get you to the teleporter to take you to the mainland
Right.
and there are holes in the floor everywhere. I mentioned this, I think, last week, where what frustrated me and I had a problem with was not touching these holes and falling all the way back down to the sub basement and having to work my way back up.
Oh.
Like, I didn't have issues with the monsters. I had issues actually noticing which part of the map was away, like was
Hmm.
was not there and I just kept falling through the floors, 2 or 3 floors up, as I was trying to get to the teleporter. And that was one of those moments where, I know we discussed last week, that I just put the game down. I was like, you know what? No, not right now. I'm going to take this Switch. I'm going to sit it over here. And then I came back to it like the next day or something like that. But that was the trouble I had early on, because it was the way I controlled it. Apparently, I just couldn't tell like where that barrier was on like being able to walk right here versus walking right here.
Yeah. You're gonna absolutely hate the later sections, various sections where you have to walk across like rope and you have to very
Oh,
carefully hit buttons because if you go too far off the rope on either side, you fall back down.
I'm
So you have
usually
you
good.
have that to look forward to.
I'm usually okay at that in like platformers and stuff like that. I have no problem doing that kind of thing. But in an RPG like this, where the controls are loose and they're not necessarily made for that sort of precision, I'm
Hmm.
not good at that. And or maybe it was just me not being able to see the boundary of the floor to the hole.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was the issue I had. Shut up. Nope. I see the smile on your face. Uh, but but yeah, the holes were my problem.
I gotcha. Anyway, on that note, I think that's a good spot to end.
Yep.
Um, Next week we're gonna have our friend Chris join us to do like an year-end wrap up, so you guys can um, see all that. Um, Thank you guys for listening to this week's episode. Remember, you can chat with us on uh,
Blue
Twitter
Sky.
and Blue Sky at Dragon Quest FM, YouTube at DQFM. If you want to chat with me personally, I'm on those places at Dragon Questin.
And you can find me on Blue Sky at bjkgames.com, bjk.games on Instagram and Threads. And you can find me also on Mastodon. I'm trying out more on as Beej at dice.camp. So find us there. We also have a Patreon. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/DragonQuestFM and see about telling us what to talk about. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.